It started on a bright, ordinary afternoon when the world seemed perfectly normal to everyone except the three girls who dreaded the final school bell. The sun was high, the streets were calm, and children poured out of Jefferson Suburban School with laughter echoing across the neighborhood. But for Aria Thompson, her younger sister Hazel, and their friend Mina, each day felt like a countdown to the same nightmare. Every step they took home was shadowed by four older boys who treated the quiet road behind the school as their personal hunting ground. And today, as the girls walked with their backpacks slung tight and their eyes fixed straight ahead, they felt the familiar tightening in their chests, the feeling that trouble was already waiting for them. Before the story continues, if you believe in kindness, justice, and second chances, please don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe to your support helps stories like this reach more hearts. Aria had always been the responsible one, 16 years old, calm, steady, and fiercely protective of her sister. Hazel, 14, was gentle and soft-spoken. Mina, also 16, was the quiet thinker who kept emotions hidden behind her glasses. For weeks, the girls had endured constant harassment from four boys who lingered near the crossing, mocking their clothes, snatching their bags, and sometimes cornering them just to see fear in their eyes. Their names, Brett, Ryan, Mason, and Cole, were whispered by younger students as if they were some kind of threat that everyone simply accepted. What made it worse was that adults in the area rarely intervened. They watched from windows, shook their heads, or muttered that boys would be boys. The girls had spoken to teachers, but the harassment kept happening after school, outside the property line, where no one wanted to take responsibility. Day after day, the bullying chipped away at their confidence. School was no longer a place of learning, it was a place they escaped from only to enter another battle. One Thursday afternoon, when the weather was bright and windless, things escalated beyond anything the girls were prepared for. As soon as they stepped onto the quiet public road lined with trimmed lawns and parked cars, the four boys cut them off. Brett grabbed Hazel's backpack and dumped the contents across the pavement. Mina's books were scattered, and Aria was shoved hard enough to make her stumble into the bushes. The girls tried to remain calm, telling themselves that if they stayed quiet, the boys would eventually get bored. But that day, the bullies were more aggressive than ever, driven by boredom, cruelty, or the desire to impress each other. What none of them knew, what no one could have predicted, was that a group of bikers from the nearby Veterans Riding Club, men known for their discipline and protective instincts, were riding down that same street at that exact moment. Their leader, Rowan Kaler, a man in his late 40s with a weathered face and the kind of presence that made people straighten up, slowed his motorcycle when he spotted movement on the road. Behind him rode two of his closest club members, Logan Creed and Hunter Vale, both large, steady men who knew what real danger looked like. They thought they were simply passing by a school zone. But what they actually witnessed was the moment Hazel slipped and fell, scraped her knee, and Brett laughed at her tears. Rowan braked so hard the tires screeched. The bikes halted in a line like a wall of steel and authority. The three girls froze, unsure if this was another threat or a miracle. The bikers removed their helmets slowly, exchanging looks that carried years of understanding. These men had seen countless forms of injustice, this one cut deep in a different way. Logan's eyes darkened, Hunter's jaw clenched, and Rowan stepped forward with a calm but powerful stride that made the boys instinctively retreat. The boys, suddenly realizing they were no longer the strongest figures on the street, tried to mask their fear with defiance. But their trembling hands and shrinking posture gave them away. Rowan didn't shout because he didn't need to. His presence was enough to drain the arrogance from their faces. The girls watched with a mixture of shock and relief as the bikers positioned themselves between them and the bullies. The daytime air felt clearer, the sunlight steadier, as if the world itself had paused to witness what was about to unfold. Rowan motioned for the boys to kneel, not out of cruelty, but to force them to confront the weight of their actions. The boys looked around helplessly, but the street was filled with silent onlookers, neighbors, parents, and people who had always stayed quiet. Now, with the bikers there, they didn't look away. They didn't shrug. They didn't walk back inside. For the first time, the community held the bullies accountable. Aria stood behind the bikers, her heart still pounding but feeling a strange, steady strength growing inside her. Hazel wiped her tears, and Mina clutched her bag tightly, realizing that kindness sometimes appears in the form of steel, leather, and courage. No violence was needed. No punches were thrown. Rowan simply held a wooden stick at his side, not to use, but to show the boys that this was no game. He demanded change not through force, but through consequence. He ordered them to pick up every scattered item, apologize properly, and face the families they had intimidated. As the boys obeyed, humiliation etched on their faces. The three girls felt the first real breath of safety in weeks. What struck them hardest was not the fear the bikers inspired, but the protection they offered so instinctively. Rowan's voice softened slightly when he finally turned toward the girls, asking if they were hurt, if they needed help, and if they had felt alone in all this. When Arya nodded silently, he told them they weren't alone anymore. From that day forward, things changed rapidly. The bullies didn't just stop, they avoided the path entirely, keeping their distance and lowering their gaze whenever they saw the girls. Word spread across the neighborhood that the bikers had stepped in, not violently, but firmly, with the kind of authority born from experience and compassion. The community began to pay more attention. Parents became more involved. Teachers stopped brushing things off. And the girls slowly regained the confidence they'd lost. Near the school entrance, where the afternoon sun once felt dangerous, the girls now walked with ease. Their days were brighter, their steps lighter, and their smiles real. They began to focus on their studies again, on their hobbies, on being teenagers instead of survivors. And whenever the bikers passed the school during their daily rides, they gave the girls a nod, a silent promise that they were safe. If this story touched your heart or reminded you of the power of standing up for others, please support this video with a like, comment, share, and subscription to Kindness Corner. Your support keeps these meaningful stories alive. Before the story closes, we'd love to hear from you.